I do believe that Koreans and Asians in general maintain an exceptionally high standard in foundational education. However, this often feels like borrowing from the future. A person's early 20s are considered the most critical stage of their life, whereas in the Western education systems, the peak tend to come later. One of the most distinctive features of the US education system is its emphasis on creativity. However, this isn't just about education itself. It stems from deeper cultural values that shape how learning is approached in different societies. My main job is lawyer, but based on my passing bar exam in Korea in just 9 months, now I work with teachers and professors on the field of education. Now I am a chairman of a Korean Society for Studying Skills. Yeah, people say I've got authority on education in Korea. I've spent over 15 years teaching students, and over the years, I've observed some distinct patterns in students' attitudes toward studying. The biggest commonality among Korean students is the lack of clear sense of purpose in their studies. As a peninsular nation with a history of external pressure, Koreans have historically developed a high degree of adaptability to change. Since the founding of modern South Korea, rigid class structures have largely disappeared, and Koreans generally don't perceive their place in society as fixed. A well-known Korean proverb, "A dragon can rise from a small stream," captures this idea. Although admittedly, many now question whether that remains true in Korean society. This is why Korean students tend to study diligently up until high school, but their motivation often plummets afterward. In high school, external pressures, parents, teachers, and the university entrance exam dictate their study habits. But once they reach university or adulthood, there's no longer structured system pushing them forward, and many begin to drift. This explains why many Korean adults feel mentally distanced from the concept of studying. They never truly internalized its purpose beyond in-situational demands, and without that structure, their motivation collapses. I studied 96 hours per a week, and one of my students I'm teaching now, studying over 100 hours per week. She doesn't rest on a holiday. One of the most distinctive features of the US education system is its emphasis on creativity. However, this isn't just about education itself. It stems from deeper cultural values that shape how learning is approached in different societies. In Korea, cultural harmony and social cohesion, as I mentioned earlier, Korea leans towards a submissive cultural orientation, meaning that disagreeing with others or openly criticizing their opinions is often discouraged. In some cases, it can even be perceived disrespectful or confrontational. This reference for consensus extends into education, where the system places less emphasis on debate, independent thinking, or creative problem solving, and instead focuses on structured learning, memorization, and mastering predetermined methods. The goal is to establish one ideal model of problem solving and train students to replicate and perfect it. An approach that which aligns the Koreans' cultural values of cooperation and collective effort. In contrast, the American education system encourages students to express their own ideas and challenging existing viewpoints. Debate is not just accepted, but expected. And questioning authority or conventional wisdom is considered a natural and valuable part of learning. This results in an education system prioritizes critical thinking, creative problem solving, and independent inquiry. While Korean students are trained to master problem methods, American students are encouraged to explore new possibilities and develop their own perspectives, which makes creativity a much more organic and essential part of their education. One of the biggest weaknesses of the US education system is the stark disparity in educational opportunities based on economic status. In Korea, the education system is centrally standardized and with a nationwide university entrance exam and a highly centralized education policy. This helps minimize resources gaps between schools, at least in comparison to the US. While Korea's system is far from perfect, it does aim for practical equality in educational opportunities, and to some extent, it has achieved that goal. In contrast, the American system operates much more on market-driven principles. Competition and individual success are strongly emphasized. Education is treated as a commodity, meaning that a student's access to quality schooling, better teachers, and superior learning resources is often determined by their family's finance status. As a result, students are not competing on a level playing field from the start. In the US, theoretically, anyone can succeed, but in reality, the starting conditions are vastly unequal. Those born into wealthier families have access to elite private schools, star tutors, extracurricular opportunities, and some networks that dramatically increase their chances of success. Whereas lowest income students often struggle with unfunded public schools and few academic resources. In short, while the American system excels in fostering creativity and independent thought, it falls short in providing equal access to quality education, making economic background a major determining factor in a student's success. Rather than calling it superior, I'd describe it as a key factor in America's competitive edge. America values the individual over the collective, whereas Korean places more emphasis on group cohesion. Because of those cultural differences, American education naturally fosters creativity and critical thinking, offering students a more flexible system with greater freedom to choose their own curriculum. Unlike Korea, where education is largely exam-driven and American schools incorporate a broader range of extracurricular activities such as art, music, sports, community service, and club participation. Helping students develop holistically rather than just academically. Another key aspect is individuality. In the US, there is a strong emphasis on recognizing and respecting students' unique strengths and differences. This translates into great autonomy in learning, and personalized education programs and extend academic support systems tailored to different student needs. Of course, Korea has also introduced many of these student-centered programs, but due to cultural differences, the results have been less pronounced. The strengths of each system are deeply rooted in their respective social values, making direct comparison challenging. But America's flexibility, emphasis on creativity, and holistic approaches to education are undeniable, some of the key factors contributing to its global competitiveness. But if I were to add one more, it would be power distance, which Harriet Hofstadter researched and said, in Korea, power distance is high, meaning there is a greater emotional and social distance between individuals at different levels of authority. This often results in two extreme reactions: either strict obedience or strong resistance toward figures of authority. This isn't unique to Korea. It's a general phenomenon observed in societies with high power distance. In contrast, the US has a low power distance culture. Teachers still hold authority, but there is less emphasis on hierarchy and absolute obedience. Students are more encouraged to question, challenge, and engage with teachers as equals in discussion. This cultural trait fosters an education system where debate, independent thought, and critical questioning are not only accepted, but actively encouraged. The teacher-student dynamic is often less rigid, allowing for a more interactive and participatory learning environment compared to Korea's structured, hierarchical approach. But I do believe that Koreans and Asians in general maintain an exceptionally high standard in foundational education. However, as I've mentioned before, this often feels like borrowing from the future. The students push themselves too hard, too early, which can lead to burnout and loss of passion for lifelong learning. Because of this, I wouldn't necessarily call it as a strength of the Asian education system, but rather a difference in when individuals are expected to peak academically. Whereas in the Western education systems, the peaks tend to come later. In Korea and Japan, for instance, a person's early 20s are considered the most critical stage of their life, especially in terms of which university they enter. Even though societal perspectives have started to shift in recent years, there is still a strong emphasis on one's academic background, university prestige, and career trajectory being determined at an early stage. Western education systems often take a more gradual approach, placing less pressure on students to achieve their peak performance too soon. There's more flexibility in career paths, and alternative routes to success are generally socially accepted. So rather than saying Asian education systems are stronger, I'd say that they simply prioritize the early achievement, while Western systems allow for a later, more sustained development of skills and expertise. Korea has actively adopted many aspects of the American education system, incorporating what it sees as its best features. One of the most obvious examples is the abolition of the judicial examination, the traditional Korean way, which was replaced by a US-style law school, the by-exam system. However, what I find particularly concerning is that many people fail to acknowledge the fundamental cultural differences between two countries when implementing these systems. This isn't just an issue in education. There have been countless failed startups in Korea that attempted to replicate Silicon Valley's flat cooperative hierarchy only to struggle to shut down. Of course, these failures can't be attributed solely to cultural misalignment, but just as coffee needs the right climate to grow, systems and policies require the right social and cultural conditions to thrive. Korea, in its high adaptability and survival-driven mindset, import the visual aspect of successful foreign system without always considering whether deeper structural and cultural foundations are in place. In education, this tendency demands greater caution, as blindly implementing foreign models without cultural integration can lead to inefficiencies and unintended consequences. On the other hand, I haven't seen much evidence that the US has been significantly influenced by the Korean education system. There are some exceptions, such as a growing emphasis on strengthening foundational skills in math and science, areas where Asian students consistently excel. There have also been an effort to introduce structured after-school learning programs, possibly taking inspiration from East Asian education models. However, in terms of broad systemic changes, I haven't come across any substantial research or statistical evidence suggesting that American education has been meaningfully shaped by the Korean system. If anything, the influence seems to be largely one directional, with Korea adopting more from the US than vice versa. If I had to pinpoint the most significant, I would say it comes down to interest and difficulty level. The kind of motivation that truly sustains lifelong learning is intrinsic motivation, the kind of that comes from within. And the core of the intrinsic motivation is enjoyment. Students are most engaged and driven when they find genuine interest in their studies. Now in Korea, if someone says they enjoy studying, they might be seen as a bit strange. But this isn't about making studying fun in the way a game is fun. Rather, it's about managing difficulty levels in a way that makes studying engaging rather than overwhelming. When a task is too easy, it's boring. When it's too hard, it's frustrating. The key is to introduce just enough uncertainty to trigger dopamine release and making the process naturally rewarding. A simple practical strategy would be to start with easiest or most interesting parts of a subject. Instead of following a textbook in order, students should begin with the chapters they find most engaging or least intimidating. Success in small, manageable steps leads to a compounding effect, much like compound interest. Once the student achieves a sense of mastery over something small, their confidence grows and momentum builds naturally, like rolling a snowball down a hill. There's a Korean saying, the first step is half the journey. I believe this applies perfectly to study habits and motivation. What you choose to start with is the most critical decision, as it determines whether learning will feel rewarding and sustainable or frustrating and exhausting. One key perspective on how individuals should approach learning in this new age. Korea still has rural farming communities, and when modern farming equipment, like tractors, cultivators, and mechanized tools, were first introduced, those who failed to learn how to use them inevitably fell behind in agricultural productivity. In many ways, AI is just like these advanced farming tools. One of the defining characteristics of Homo sapiens is our ability to use tools, I believe. No matter how advanced a tool may be, it remains just that, a tool. It is ultimately humans who decide when, how, and for what purpose it should be used. AI and other technologies exist to solve problems, meaning that by nature, they are past-oriented and they work by analyzing existing patterns and optimizing past knowledge to generate solutions. But in today's, the problem solving is no longer enough. What truly matters is problem creation, the ability to anticipate future challenges and design entirely new questions that haven't yet been asked. In an era where machines vastly outperform humans in computational power and efficiency, what remains uniquely human is our capacity of creativity and intuition. Ultimately, the history of humanity is the history of learning. AI is simply the newest and most powerful learning tool we have encountered so far. Mastering it is not an option, it is necessity. Only those who embrace and adopt will remain relevant in the rapidly evolving world ahead.